Requesting connection. Established. Encrypted. We're live. The show you've been asking for. Advice, technology, and community. Linux first, all others second. This is Ask Noah.
Live from Altispeed Technologies, the Ask Noah Show starts right now. This is the show where we came to do all the things on Linux they said couldn't be done and take your questions on how to do the same. The phone lines are open this hour. To be a part of the program, it is a free call, 1-855-450-NOAH. That's 855-450-6624, or send an email to live@asknoahshow.com. My name is Noah Chalaya. I am your host. Delighted to be here with you as another episode of the Ask Noah Show kicks off this hour. Joining me, my co-host, Mr. Steve Ovens. Welcome in, sir.
Noah, it feels like it's been forever.
Well, it kind of has been forever. I mean, it's been a week, and now we're back again.
Well, I suppose, but you were off gallivanting, and I was stuck at home. You know, I don't know what that says about me, but I'm a little bit envious that you got to run around and talk to all the people that I should know and don't.
Yes, I did enough socializing for both of us. That's true. Hey, in order to get there, Steve, you know what I had to do?
What?
I had to present a form of RHEL ID. Now, the government tells me that the RHEL ID, after multiple delays, the RHEL ID Act of 2005, you might remember that from 20 years ago, or maybe you don't because it was 20 years ago, finally has gone into effect in the United States. As of May 7th, the deadline for the RHEL ID enforcement has finally arrived, and it means we're now more secure in the skies. But
you sound very convinced about that.
Well, here's the deal. I am convinced that in the last 20 years, we got along just fine without it, I guess is what I'm trying to say. Like 2005, this act comes out, and of course, as government does, and doesn't roll out quite as fast as we all would have liked. And so here we are 20 years later still talking about it. So here's the bottom line. The thing that I wanted to bring up on the show and the attention that I wanted to draw to it is based on a couple of following principles. So the first is, my state permits the ability to do either. I can get a regular driver's license, or I can get a quote-unquote RHEL ID. If you're not familiar with the concept of a RHEL ID, it is like the following. Your state runs a state-run database in which they enter your demographics, your name, all of the things. And then they print your ID, which has a little star in the upper right-hand corner signifying that it's a RHEL ID. The RHEL ID means that instead of just taking the card at card's value, which any of us that were around for the Silk Road knows how that can be forged and how easy it is to, in fact, get a fake ID. The RHEL ID correlates that ID with that state database. And so when you go through security or anywhere else, they can know that that ID is real because it can query the state database. It's great. It's good. It's fantastic. Here is the problem. The first problem that I have with it is that I have the ability to do either. So if I wanted to go get a RHEL ID, I have to present a myriad of additional identification, and then I have to pay more money, all for the privilege of getting this a RHEL ID, this thing I don't really want. The bigger thing, though, that it does is it's the federal government forcing me at the state level to do a particular thing. Now, the reason I wanted to bring this up with you is I expect you to take somewhat of a pragmatic approach on this, Steve. You hail from Canada, as it were, and in a lot of ways, you grew up with some of this, so it doesn't strike you as egregious as maybe as it strikes me.
No, I mean, in Canada, the centralized nature of the government has existed for quite a long time. So one of the things that is for instance, is doing your taxes in Canada. The way that it often works is your tax representative or your accountant or whoever just has you sign some paperwork that says that they can contact the revenue agency on your behalf. And then they pull down all of your employment stuff and all of your related, like if you've got bonuses or stock or all of that sort of stuff. And so from my perspective, doing taxes was like I signed a piece of paper and that was pretty much it. I didn't have to do much other than that because the government already had that. And related to travel, I don't know how long ago, but many, many years ago, over a decade at this point, we had to use our passports to fly. So for the entire time that I've been at Red Hat, which is a decade now, I've had to show my passport even to fly domestically within Canada.
Really?
It's required whenever you get on a flight. And I don't even remember when they started that. So I guess I just kind of shrug at this and be like, so you're complaining about showing ID that the government requires you to have anyways.
Yeah, and so again, I'm glad. I'm glad that you're taking this approach, the pragmatic stance. Here's the deal. If it was just the government acquires ID to fly, and the government gives you an ID, that I don't really object to. Indeed, much to your point, the way that I've been able to travel internationally is I go to the government and I say, hey, could I please have an ID that requests on my behalf, or really on your behalf, that they let me come in. And the government does that very kindly and gives me a thing that says, on behalf of the United States government, Secretary of State requests that you let Mr. RHEL AI enter your country. And every country that I've been to so far has looked at that document and went, yeah, sure, yeah. The Secretary of State U.S. says, yeah, sure, yeah, come on in, right? That's kind of been the response. So if you're asking me to do that to fly domestically, fine. I mean, whatever, right? I don't really care. And that's what I've done. And so that's point number one. If you haven't flown and you're wondering what's going on about the RHEL ID thing, you don't actually have to have a RHEL ID from your state. You can absolutely use a passport or a passport card. Or Steve, you actually have like an international travel card. Talk to me about that.
So I'm part of the Nexus program, which is within North America. It's a security related thing where they ask you a bunch of questions and then they put you on the hook for, you get pretty grievously fined if you get caught smuggling things and all of the rest of that sort of stuff. And it's a way to get expedited security settings in all across. So land crossings all have a Nexus line that has significantly less, and you can use it. It counts as TSA pre. You can find it in all of the airports, that sort of stuff. And so they call you in, and they do interviews. In Canada, they take your retina scan. In the US, they take your fingerprints. And yeah, they do some level of background check, and they talk to people that know you and all kinds of stuff like that.
You didn't feel like you were surrendering any particular freedoms to do that?
Well, from the perspective of like the government. So I've had a secret clearance. I have had background checks to work with children in the past, which is kind of equivalent to the same level of depth that they go for this. I've had to carry my passport. I kind of looked it up on the fly. Canada implemented the passport requirement to fly in 2007. So, pretty much my entire adult life, I've been using a passport to fly and didn't really think much of it. And so for your secret clearance, you have a background check and you get fingerprinted. And like I said, it didn't seem like, and in Canada, the government already has all this information. That's the other thing, is like, I wasn't giving up anything, because if you go to the government and say, hey, file my taxes for me, and they have all the information from your stuff anyways, that, if they've got your taxes stuff, they've pretty much got everything.
So here's something else I wanted to get your thoughts on. As I was flying, after I used my passport in place of my RHEL ID, so there's this concept of be your real self, right? There's all these things, be your real self, be your real self. And it was actually Simon Chopin from Canonical and the recently passed away Steve Langeseth, who were having a conversation, and I was just kind of fly on the wall overhearing this. And basically the premise of the conversation is the name that is on your government ID the real you? And Steve's point, Steve Langesek, not Steve Ovens, Steve Langesek's point was, yes, it is. Simon Chopin's standpoint was, no, it's not. And Simon took the standpoint that, no, it's not your ID. It's your government ID. It's the name. It's the identity for which the government wants you to assume. You didn't necessarily have input on it. You may not necessarily identify with it. You may not even like it. And you may not be what you want to use or what you want people to know you buy online and all the rest of it. Or maybe you're one of those people that wish to have a completely distinguished life, where you want, a screen name or a pseudonym for this group of people, and you want to be known this way in that group of people, and you want to be known that. So different people, different strokes for different folks, right? Nobody's there to judge. But that stuck with me, that concept of that's your government ID. That's not your real ID. So as I see all of these signs talking about be your real self, be your real you, it's as if we're trying to combine, I don't know, I don't want to say social engineering, but we're trying to market it, right? We're trying to make it sexy and cool and awesome and appealing. And yeah, I'm my real self. I want to be my real self, Steve. So the real me, not the fake me. Does that Does that rub you at all the wrong way?
Honestly, you kind of
Too far.
veered. Yeah, this conversation seems silly to me, just from the perspective of like, you can change your name. So if you don't like your name, you can change your name. So it doesn't have to be about what you've chosen. And this is not a political show, so we're not going to get into the fact that like genders and all that. But putting all of that aside, it's your face, it's your name, it's your address.
So it must be the real you.
I don't understand what else it is. Like, so you want to give yourself a bunch of nicknames? That's fine. The government knows those too. I guarantee it. Like,
so, all right, I'll take it to the extreme. Okay, here's a poster. This is right hand to God. This is a real poster I walked by in the airport, and it says it's a picture of a guy putting a shoe on, and it says, "Isn't getting dressed once per day enough?" I promise this is children's safe. You don't have to turn it off. Isn't getting dressed once per day enough? Get TSA pre-check. Enroll now at tsa.gov. Only 5 minutes online and 10 minutes in person. TSA pre, and then a green check mark, so you know that it's TSA pre-check. Get it? So the thing that stood out to me here is it's the government has rolled out a program in which you can pay to not get partially undressed to go through security to comply with the regulation the government put in place in the first place, that you have to get partially undressed to go through security. Does that seem circular at all to you?
Well,
we're creating a program to fix the problem that we created in the first place.
I mean, humans do this all over the place. It's not just government. And I'm not letting government off the hook. I'm a big critic of government as a general rule. I think they should be watched. But this is more fundamental to how humans work. If you create a rule, whatever it is, and then you find the rule to be deficient, if you remove the rule,
you were wrong.
You were wrong. And nobody likes to admit that they're wrong. So what we're much more likely to do as a species is to create another rule that allows us to poke holes in the one rule that we did have.
See,
because
it's not wrong. This is just better.
Exactly. I wasn't wrong. I just, we evolve over time, and I'm just simply evolving with the situation.
Oh my gosh. All right. Well, the entire write-up is available. The EFF has done a great job. They have their article comically titled "Security Theater Unrealized and Flying Without Real ID." And it digs into this topic in much more depth than we'll have time to go to on the show. And so if you're interested, I highly encourage you to head over to EFF.org and check out the article on the Real ID. Make sure you have a Real ID and or an alternative ID if you plan to fly now.
From the Linux Newswire newsroom, this is the Week in Review with JT.
For the week of May 25th, 2025, here's the Linux and open source news. Firefox 139 is available, and Mozilla has announced that it's shutting down Pocket in July. The 6.15 Linux kernel has been released. Microsoft has open sourced most of the WSL code. In distro news, NixOS 25.05 has been released. RHEL 10 has been launched, and Red Hat has released RHEL 9.6. Alma Linux 9.6 is out. The Fedora project has confirmed its plans to remove X11 support for GNOME Wayland sessions. And KDE has unveiled Carton as a new libvirt-based graphical virtual machine manager. In security news, security researchers have discovered a zero-day vulnerability in the Linux kernel's SMB server implementation using OpenAI's O3 language model. Continuing into other open source AI news, Mistral AI launches DevStral, a powerful new open source SWE agent that runs on laptops. Meta has created Llama Firewall, an open source framework to detect and mitigate AI-centric security risks. And lastly, Operant AI launches Woodpecker to bring open source red teaming to AI and to cloud environments.
Mike McGrath. He is the Vice President of Software Engineering at Red Hat and a guest this hour on the Ask Noah Show. Mike, welcome into the program.
Hey guys, it's great to be here.
Thanks for making the time, sir. So with a few years in hindsight, looking back at how all the licensing stuff has played out, what are your takeaways? Are you still getting feedback, or have things kind of settled down?
We still occasionally get feedback. I would also say that it's taken a while for people to kind of settle on what actually happened. And it's especially true if you're just a customer or user that's not paying attention to the contribution model. I think that they finally better understood what we announced and why we announced it. And I also think that in those early days, there was such a strong, vocal group of people that it was hard to figure out, like, from a statistical point of view, how things landed. And since then, we've actually found quite a few people that understood what we did and why we did it. And so, yeah, I think it's, at this point, the market has absorbed it as much as they can. And, I think we're still feeling pretty confident about what we did, and we'd do it again.
If I was to use the expression, we're getting to the point where the flower can kind of blossom, are we getting to a point now where the industry has settled in, and now you're starting to see kind of the fruits of the labor come out to where products and services are basing around the framework that Red Hat has set out?
Yeah, I think one of the key pieces that was just difficult for people to swallow is the idea that Red Hat would be somehow anti some community doing something, because we're a very community-friendly group. But in this case, we've ended up with a community or two that had been, in our opinion, acting in bad faith on our normal open source principles. And so, I think in that respect, we're seeing the fruits of our labor in that I think the industry and our communities are having the right conversations now. There's definitely a group of people out there that believe that, just as the founders of open source intended, that open source developers should be paid, and they should be paid well. And they understood that this sort of cloning, rebranding model is kind of an anti-open source behavior. And I think that it took people a long time to kind of understand what that meant. And they were upset, Red Hat for so many years fully allowed these clones, and it was totally fine. And we certainly can't stop them. That's the power of open source. But we can ask them to play by the rules. And we also are not obligated to assist them in competing with us. And I think that's where we've landed, and we stand by that.
And if somebody has a Red Hat subscription, they send in the $5. You will send them a copy of the source code as they are entitled to.
Yes, and you don't even need the $5 if you've got a modem or any sort of internet connection. You can just download the source code. It is there. It's via that mechanism, which is how most people get it. It's all there. You can take it, and even I would say even to the cloners. If you're upset with something Red Hat has done, just do the open source thing. Download the code. You've got it now. Fork it and do a better job.
Yeah, and add some value. That would be your...
Exactly.
When that first all happened, and there were people going, "Oh, RHEL's not giving away the source code anymore," I actually sent in the $5 to the legal department. It was like, "Here's the page out of my RHEL OS. It says this. It says here's my $5." Yeah. And I got a USB stick back with all the source code on it.
I was on the thread. We don't get those requests that often, and so it took us a little bit to figure out what to do. And so our buddy Josh actually went to Best Buy that day, bought a stick, and said, "Okay, I'll get it." And he mailed it and, and got it all done, because that's we offer it. Like, that's a thing. Not many people do it, but it's a thing, and we offered it. And
talk to me about RHEL 10. Developing any product is a complex challenge. You as a software engineer have undoubtedly experienced that in a variety of different ways. What are some of the accomplishments of RHEL 10 in the release, and what are some of the things that draw your attention? Say, I'm really proud of this.
Oh yeah, RHEL 10. I'll tell you just real quick. One of my favorite moments of RHEL 10 was just a couple weeks ago to prepare for Red Hat Summit, where we are right now. And we had gotten feedback that our analyst deck was too long. So I scheduled a meeting with our main product person, our main marketing person, and we spent probably 30 minutes going over this deck. And by the time we got to the end, we realized, like, there's no fluff here. Like, this was such a full, meaty release. And I just, there was that moment I sat back, I was like, oh, this, like, we actually did deliver all the stuff that we were trying to deliver. It's all very meaty and good. I think we love all of our features equally, but my favorite is definitely Lightspeed, RHEL Lightspeed with the command line assistant. And so, I'm an ops guy by trade. I live on the command line. I'm still a VI guy. I'm aware that there are other editors now. Do not care. And so, but the RHEL Lightspeed is interesting for two reasons. One, we have consistently had feedback from some customers that they would like to do even more with RHEL, but they may be geographically located in a place where it's hard to get talent. Maybe they can't find them. There's plenty of Windows talent, but harder to find Linux talent. And so this is a way to take anybody that knows even a little bit about Windows, they can transfer those skills using the command line tool, which is basically, it's an AI-backed command line tooling where you can just say, hey, why is SSHD not starting? And it will say, hey, you can look at these logs, and if you want to, you can even pipe those logs into RHEL Lightspeed, and it'll tell you how to fix it. And it doesn't fix it automatically. This is not agentic AI, but it'll give you a copy and paste thing that you can run. And so those more associate engineers, they can suddenly do more complex things more quickly. And also for us guys that live on the command line, we all have commands that we haven't run in 3 or 4 years.
Right.
And now I don't have to go out to Google and try to find it or go through the man pages. I can just say, hey, I remember there's this command, or like, hey, I remember there's a way to make DD print its progress if you send it some sort of kill signal, but I can't remember which signal that was because I haven't done it in several years. And it'll just go, and it'll using our K-base articles and other information available, it'll just tell you right there on the command line, just run this command, and it'll do it. And so I think that's my favorite feature right now.
Talk to me a little bit about your background. Did you have a background in software engineering, system administration, or both?
Systems administration. So I, many years ago, have had a few sysop jobs. I was hired on at Red Hat to lead Fedora infrastructure. And so I was a volunteer doing Fedora infrastructure, setting up Nagios and monitoring and all that stuff way back in the day. And sometime in around 2010-ish, maybe 2009, I switched over to, I was actually a founding member at the time. It was called Project Libra, but it was what eventually became OpenShift. And so that was my first real foray into a proper product level engineering work. And I've just kind of worked my way back and forth in the company. I've been there for 18 years. And now I lead, RHEL and OpenStack and Insights and Satellite and the in-vehicle operating system, lots of products. And it's just such a great company to work for. I really have enjoyed my time at Red Hat.
Talk to me about the AI assistant inside of the command line. For somebody that is hearing about that for the first time, how would you describe it?
It's literally a command. It's just the C command, get it? Lightspeed, speed of light, C. C space, and then you type English to it, what you want to do, and it'll think for a second. It calls out to a central AI service that we have. And so you'll want to be thoughtful. You won't want to send passwords and stuff over there, but you can ask it these things, and it'll tell you, oh, this is how you reset the root password if you don't know it. And it'll just print it in English. It'll give you copy and pastable commands that you can run. It'll give you hints almost immediately. And it really does cut down on that troubleshooting time. And it also, I think it's one of those things that so clearly displays its potential just by using it once. Like, it's just, oh, I get it, and you don't have to use it. I know there's a lot of people out there that are, hey, I'm not really down with AI, but I don't know, if you install it and just type C, space, what the heck is the kernel doing right now? It's very powerful, and that's very helpful.
Are the responses that come back from, so let me start here.
Yeah.
So calls out to a thing, so requires an internet connection. It isn't local.
Today, but it is on our roadmap. We're working on an on-premise version as well.
Oh, very cool. That's exciting.
Yeah.
So today on the internet, be careful about the sensitivity of the information you're sending. Are the responses that come back to the machine pre-approved? So, for example, do you look ahead of time to say, here are some of the things, and here's, referencing the knowledge base articles?
We have some safety in place to make sure that the responses are relevant, but we are not taking human beings out of the loop. So it's always up to the human being to look at it and just say, yeah, that makes sense, and no, maybe I don't want to rm-rf space /, there is still a level of thoughtfulness required. But it is if you look at it in terms of a tool, for an operator, as opposed to a way to replace the operator somehow, that's really what we're going for, is just a way to kind of make those operators and admins more efficient so that they can spend more time doing the things they want to do instead of Googling esoteric commands.
Yeah. So how would you differentiate is it called C? Is that what's the name of it?
Well, I think the official name is the command line. The command line tool powered by Lightspeed is maybe the marketing name. But yeah, the actual command you would run on the thing is C space and go.
How would you compare the command line tool powered by Lightspeed to a search engine?
Yeah, so a search engine will tend to go and find pre-existing materials that you will then have to click on and go read, determine if that's relevant to you, and go from there. Whereas AI will actually use the exact terms and things that it's looking for on your machine and give you the exact commands back that you might want to run. So for example, maybe you've got several, maybe you've got a RAID array and there's a drive, you've got several drives in the RAID array, and one of those drives has failed and you need to rebuild it. And so maybe it's a software RAID. You've got to go figure out what that is. You've got to figure out how to replace it, and then you've got to run some commands. Online, it will say something like, if you want to replace a drive, it will say something like /dev/SD X, and it'll make you remember, oh, I don't want X, I want like a DD or something like that. AI will actually, if you give it the error, it will realize, oh, we're talking about SDD here, and this is the commands you've got to run, and it'll give you literally the exact copy and paste command that you need to go run. Maybe you've got a script that has, custom script that's got variables in it, and you're running it, and you get an error. You've never seen this error before in your life. Put it into Lightspeed, and it'll say, oh, yeah, it'll give you the exact commands you need. This is how you fix it with the exact formatting that you have in your custom script. And in that way, it is both faster and far more powerful than search engine would be.
So I wanted to ask you a little bit about the CentOS Stream engagement.
Yeah.
Because as we talked about before, there was the change in source availability. And you guys moved CentOS upstream so that the community could actually get involved in what was going to be going into RHEL.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear both what has gone well and then what was like a pain point that you learned with CentOS Stream 9 that you're now using that knowledge for CentOS Stream 10.
Yeah, and soon CentOS Stream 11, I'm assuming as well. Some of the things that have gone well are we continue to hear good feedback from people that are using it. There's a lot of stuff like they don't even notice a change happen. They were never yum updating every day anyway. And so for a lot of those people, like this proved that the model works. Like they can go through, they can see what we're doing well ahead of time. Even internally, we have teams that are testing on CentOS Stream to make sure it will work on RHEL. And I know we have a couple of partners and things doing that too. I would love to see more of that. I think that I'd say two main things that I think could have gone better. Number one is it is still difficult to contribute to. Unlike Fedora, which is a true community model with true community governance, this is an open source community that is run by Red Hatters because this is our product. This is where we make a lot. This is a multi-billion-dollar product. And so we can't just accept everything that comes in. And another big part is even if you give us the contribution, it turns out for us that it tends to only be half or less of the cost. We still have to QE it. We have to make sure it's certified. There's a lot of other stuff that has to happen. And so we've had a lot of contributions from people that were disappointed because it is so hard to contribute to. And so we've got, and that's on top of the fact that some of our internal engineers, they're just busy people and they may not have even realized that a request came in. And so we've got people kind of watching that and kind of shepherding it through to help set expectations correctly. And I think the other thing that I personally would love to see go better is a more thriving SIG community. We've had some good SIG successes. I think some of the SIGs even stayed through with us through the whole transition. And we've done some experiments. We did a great experiment with Intel and ISA v4 in the CentOS space, and I think even Phoronix picked up on it. Or there's things like that that can be really powerful where we can collaborate with the community and others in an open space where anybody can come and take a look at it. I just wish there was more of it.
One other quick follow-up on that. When you're dealing with CentOS streams, obviously you guys are pulling from even further upstream repos. Mm-hmm. Has there been any positive or negative pushback from further upstream projects for when a commit comes into CentOS streams, a PR or something, and then you guys then helping push that further upstream?
No, typically, I think we see more of that in Fedora. Typically, by the time we're looking at it in CentOS Stream, it is something that already exists upstream. And if it's not, we won't take it into CentOS Stream anyway until it is upstream, or at least until we've offered it. Sometimes CentOS Stream and RHEL are so far different from what upstream is now, they don't even want the patch. And so that's been one of the things. But yeah, upstream, we have seen, because of the announcement and some of the vitriol around that, we have seen some upstream communities say, well, we're not going to CI test on that anymore. But I think a lot of that has died down at this point.
For someone who's never heard of it before, can you give me explain it to me like I'm 5 version of what RHEL AI is? I think a lot of people have heard of it, AI. A lot of people think of it just from the standpoint of like, well, I go to ChatGPT and I ask it the question and it gives me the answer. What does that look like when you're looking at deploying it as a solution for a customer?
Yeah, so RHEL AI it's not RHEL, it's a different offering than RHEL, but it is built on top of RHEL. And it is an AI optimized solution that comes with things like InstructLab, which has a model built into it, and we offer some support around those models. That's stuff that you can't get with RHEL proper. And so if you're looking to run AI workloads at scale, RHEL AI is where we're sending you. We're working very closely with our partners to make sure that it is a best-in-class experience. The fact is, getting an AI server going is a bit more complex than just your standard x86 server. Enabling hardware is more difficult than ever, and it's more multifaceted than ever. And the drivers and user space is changing so quickly. And RHEL AI, especially when you combine it with something like VLLM, the technology we got from the Neural Magic acquisition, suddenly takes this incredibly fast-moving, one of the fastest-moving ecosystems I can ever remember, and it brings it all together in a very functional package. And so if you've been spending a lot of your time trying to install various Intel or NVIDIA or whatever drivers, take a look at RHEL AI. Like, we're doing everything we can to make this a point-and-click experience that we can.
So you have a make-believe customer, make-believe corporation, and they have, let's just say they have sensitive data, and they want to leverage AI, and maybe they're getting offers from these other companies, and they're getting offers from different solutions that are, just give us access to the database, just give us API access, and we'll plug in, and we'll go ahead and we'll get you all the AI things that you want. Mm-hmm. Makes them nervous because, well, what does that mean? What access do you have to my data? Are you going to use it? There's a bunch of questions that come into it. Is that the kind of scenario that RHEL AI is designed to fit like a glove?
Yeah, I mean, we have a lot of sophisticated customers, and in that AI space, I think that the tagline, the first time I heard it was at the keynote, but it was something like any model, any cloud, any hardware, anywhere, and that's what we're going for. And the fact is, let's just be honest. As I've talked with customers at the Red Hat Summit this week, everybody's having a hard time getting GPUs. And so everybody's getting GPUs from wherever they can get it. I think the phrase is beggars can't be choosers. And so they're getting GPUs from wherever they want. It's exactly what we're set up to help with. So you install RHEL AI on the server with whatever hardware you've got, and now each of those systems, behaves in an expected manner that is easy to scale out. And so, yeah, that's, those sophisticated customers that need that, it's exactly what we're trying to help with.
So let's say there's a customer that they currently have a developer subscription with Red Hat for access to RHEL. Mm-hmm. And they're building their software platform or whatever they're going to do. They hear about RHEL AI and they go, oh, we would love to try that. Is there a capability of getting a RHEL AI instance under the developer license, even if it's just maybe one seat, so that they can test it and figure out if it's going to actually be possible for them to move to?
That's a good question. Being an employee, I get to cheat. And so I actually don't think it's available today. And I'm going to be honest, I don't know what the plan is there. So I'll have to go chat with product management to find that out. Yeah, I don't know.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the changes that have come by way of, or to RHEL by way of the change of AI. So specifically, does it change the way the underlying operating system has been treated? I'll give you some context. There have been a number of people from Red Hat that I've chatted with, and I first heard it, I think, in the hallway. Somebody was joking, like, is Red Hat an AI company? And I asked a couple of Red Hat people that, and they were like, yeah, we totally are. I mean, whatever it is we were doing, AI becomes a force multiplier to make us even better at that. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, what kind of changes are coming to RHEL?
Yeah, it's a great question. We have started to let AI sort of permeate a lot of the work that we're doing. And I think, like every company that's been involved with this, first we start by spelling AI. And many years ago we did. And now we're going through to actually using it. And so actually one of my favorite changes is just an internal, you can go see it in the CentOS stream space, but every pull request that comes in now, merge request, any of them that fail gets processed through an AI tool. And that tool looks at what the error was, makes recommendations, and puts those recommendations directly into the pull request. Any pull request that comes gets this. And so this is one way we're looking at using things internally, to make us faster and more efficient. But then also at the product level, some of this is just maybe it's a bigger problem than before, but enabling hardware, making sure that it works with the software stack that we have. This is Red Hat's bread and butter. I mean, this is what we are best at. And so in a lot of ways, I think AI has certainly shifted our focus on hardware and how we enable it, but it hasn't fundamentally changed the values that we provide customers, which is just making sure this stuff just works and is stable and brings our partner and software ecosystem with it, and that's what we're doing.
Do you think we're approaching the point where people see an OS as just a bootloader for AI?
No, I don't think quite yet, because even AI mostly powers other services that we work with. I mean, AI is great for searching through data sets and things, but it's not, today at least, it's not that great in powering several applications that we interact with. Certainly, for example, email is a really fine example. I mean, maybe there's one out there, but I don't know how to communicate with you two via AI. It's not a thing that I know about yet. And so, I think that, but I also think that it's really hard to predict what the next couple of years are going to look like, especially with agentic AI, where, suddenly you've got AI going out and getting information about systems or whatever, and then making decisions and actually running those things. It's very, very contrasted with the RHEL Lightspeed example I gave earlier, where there's always a human in the loop. There is a future coming where several regular operations may not need a human being in the loop at all, and I think we're going to be prepared for that. But I also think that's going to be a major shift for everybody to make.
Talk to me about post-quantum attacks from state actors. Why is that? I mean, specifically, can you give me a rough timeline on what we're looking at? And I get that that's entirely out of your control, and it, at best, is a wet finger in the air. And then talk to me about what Red Hat's doing to address that.
Yes, I talked about this a little bit in my keynote this morning. I had to say post-quantum cryptographic algorithms several times in front of thousands of people. That was always fun. But yeah, the fact is, if you haven't been paying attention, I think especially in our industry, people understand that quantum computing is coming, and that it is good at certain things and it is bad at certain things. And one of the things that it's very good at is cracking some of the cryptographic algorithms that we have today. And so if you have data stored somewhere that is sensitive to your company or your government or whatever, and it's encrypted, maybe in an RSA 2048 key somehow, that's considered safe today. And it would take, a regular computer potentially trillions of years to decrypt that data with a brute force attack. But the fact is, a quantum computer can do that in seconds, 10, maybe 20 seconds, possibly. But those computers don't exist today. But the fact is, the data does. And so there's kind of two problems that we're dealing with. One is, there is some future date where our standard cryptographic technology of today is no longer considered safe. And worse than that, it's probably going to be by a state actor. Quantum computers are hard to build. And it's kind of like a Y2K style event, and we don't know exactly when it happens. But of course, the other big thing is, when it does happen, we may not even know. And I think that's a scary thing for some of our customers to deal with. And so, and then the question is, well, once it is broken, what does that state actor already have? Like, were they already collecting data, and now they can go back? Data 5 or 6 years ago could still be very sensitive. And so I think one of the things that we're doing is, this is one thing I'm really happy we're doing. We're doing it right. One is that we've already added some new algorithms to RHEL 10 that is considered post-quantum safe. And so if you encrypted your things today, you'll be safe then and in the future.
What are those algorithms?
Oh, you're going to ask me. I can't remember.
Okay. But they're included in RHEL 10.
They're included in RHEL 10. I forget the exact letter abbreviation of them. But I think the other thing we're doing is educating customers, because I think a lot of customers, if they even are aware of quantum computing, they probably either are interested in it and maybe they want a quantum computer, or a lot of them are like, I don't really think this is going to help me very much, not realizing that whether they're interested in it or not doesn't matter. Because if somebody has their data and they have a quantum computer, things that they consider secret are no longer secret. And so we're also out there, especially you've noticed it here at Red Hat Summit, we're really talking about this because we want to make people aware, and we want them to know that we're ahead of it. And so you can just switch to these libraries and algorithms, and you're going to be good to go.
Mike McGrath, he is the Vice President of Software Engineering at Red Hat, a guest this hour on the Ask Noah Show. Mike, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll get you back on the program soon.
Hey, it's been great talking to you.
OpenSense. You've probably heard of it as a fork of pfSense, but really, what's the difference and why change? So Steve and I thought we would take a little bit of time, carve out time from the show, to talk a little bit about OpenSense. So to kind of open this up, Steve, what are you running at your home right now?
I'm running pfSense currently.
Okay. I am as well. In full disclosure, I have two routers. I've got one that's kind of the main router and then one that the kids use for doing stuff. So OpenSense is a fork of pfSense. And early on when they initially did their fork, there was a little bit of hubbub/drama because Netgate, the parent company of pfSense, took the domain from OpenSense and wouldn't give it up and eventually was forced to hand it over. Today, there is a pretty drastic difference between the two projects. So I'll start by saying if you want a open source firewall appliance from a company, that's, I think, where Netgate is your friend, because you can go to them, you can purchase a paid appliance, there's a paid option for support. We think that gets you access to consistent release times and downloads and those sorts of things. And so if you're a business looking to make a decision, probably not a terrible way to go, particularly when you compare it with things like the Sophoses and the Ciscos and the rest of it of the world. With that said, if you're looking to support free and open source software, that's frankly kind of where the benefits ends. So as it stands right now, if you want to go download just the ISO, it requires you to create an account, and I believe they even require you to attach a credit card number. It doesn't cost anything, but you have to create the account and do all the things. Additionally, they don't want you virtualizing, which that was really the catalyst for us of what caused us to start shifting towards OpenSense, because in the end, I prefer to have the router on a separate physical box, because the last thing I want is for the vhost to crash and all of a sudden I can't even get in to fix the vhost because the internet's also down. So I actually prefer it on a separate box. But not everybody has the budget to do that. And so sometimes when they're repurposing a computer, churches, nonprofits, those sorts of things, it can be really beneficial for them to go, well, I don't have $1,000 for a router, but I do got myself a little Optiplex over here that ain't used. Can we use that? Yes, you can, right? That's a nice thing to be able to say. And so once you take virtualization out of it, again, the value proposition drops a little bit. The most egregious thing, though, pfSense will not let you move from a pfSense appliance to what they call their community edition. So if you purchase, and you can, either way, this is true. So let's say you download community edition and you install it on an old computer and you're running it and you're very happy and you think, I am going to go support the company that put this on the planet. I'm going to go purchase a Netgate appliance. You go to Netgate's store. First of all, the cheapest one rack appliance you can purchase from them is $1,000. So just from a pure aesthetic standpoint, just from a pure, like it needs to fit inside of the rack standpoint, you're $1,000 before you can even enter that. And I brought that up to Netgate directly one time, and the answer I got was just short of laughable. They seriously suggested that they made these parts that, the best I can describe it, are almost like little rubber bands that attach a Netgate 1100, the little matchstick little thing router, to rack screws. I'm like, you can't be serious. Like my competition is recommending Sophos or Cisco or whatever, and you're seriously coming at me with rubber bands. So cheapest you can get into a true 1U appliance is $1,000. But if you do that and you go and take the config that you've been building for however long or been using for however long and try to import it, it will not work, because they won't let you go from a community edition to the Netgate appliance, nor can you go the other direction. So let's talk about going the other direction. If you purchase a Netgate's appliance, you best purchase two, because we've had a number of the storage devices fail and they're soldered in. So when it dies, your only option is to go back through Netgate to get another appliance. And OBT dubs, because you can't go to the community edition, you can't just repurpose a piece of hardware. You can't repurpose another router that you have sitting around. It has to be another Netgate appliance. So if you're going to do that, buy two. Well, if I buy the Netgate appliance, it's going to be a really good device, right? It'll probably be the best that pfSense has to offer. No, not really. In fact, their own hardware doesn't meet their demands. So to address that, they bond two NICs together and they use a special VLAN that causes that to present itself as one interface. And so you're going to see that interface. Don't worry about it. It's just them hacking around the design flaw of the physical appliance. And lastly, the appliance that you purchase with them doesn't come with any support whatsoever. That was a little shocking to a couple of clients that we had recommended it to. They spend however much money, $1,000 on this thing. And it doesn't matter if you've had it for 24 hours or 30 days or whatever, you're just kind of on your own. Unless, in addition to the $1,000 appliance, you buy support. Now, I could understand if it was, hey, we don't do critical support. Hey, we only give it to you for 30 days. Hey, we only give it to you, 48 hours, 72 hours after you buy it. So if you have some questions setting the thing up, we'll be there for you. didn't really come away with that with a great experience. And if you're using their community edition, there's no consistency in the updates. It just kind of comes and goes as you please. And so there's as far as I can tell, there is no cadence of like, here's when updates come out. Steve, you drew my attention to the lack of automatability. There's a word for you. In pfSense, that kind of surprised me.
So at least as far as I was able to find, there's no API for it. And in addition to that, the types of automation that I can find, such as pfSensible, which is a module for Ansible, essentially what it does is it SSHs into the box and tinkers around with the XML and then causes pfSense to reload the XML. I have not been able to find any real good way to automate pfSense. I suppose the caveat is I'm running the community edition, and while I am aware that there is a community-supported third-party package that you can install that provides an API, I am not aware of any good way to do automation outside of what the Ansible folks are doing.
So for all of those reasons, all of us in the open source community are really struggling to support Netgate and pfSense. And that pains me to say, it really does. If there's anybody from Netgate listening, I badly want to change that opinion. But it feels like I've been forced against the wall numerous times, and it's time to look for another path. So that takes us to OpenSense. OpenSense. Let's talk about OpenSense. OpenSense is a fork of pfSense, and right off the bat, the first thing I think you're going to notice, the user interface is a bit more intuitive. So they presented in what I think is a little bit more logical, a little bit better layout. Now, I will tell you this. One thing that we did notice, switching the DHCP backend on pfSense, super smooth, super straightforward. Switching the DHCP backend on OpenSense, a little bit more challenging and a little bit more ability to stub your toe, because they don't make it very clear that you really need to only be running one. And so maybe your hand is held a little bit better with that. But again, that's not saying much, because they're going to make the switch one time and then we're kind of on a new DHCP backend. So the interface is going to be a little bit better. The other thing is they don't play games. So with pfSense, there was this game with WireGuard. First it was there, then it got pulled, then it got... No such thing with OpenSense. OpenSense, it's always a move forward. So every time you download updates, it's that the experience you're going to have is going to get better and better and better and better. They do offer a hardware device. So if you want to buy a device from them, they offer one for sale. If you're looking for a 1U appliance, I have linked in the show notes. It's essentially Chinesium, but it is $379. So even if you mark it up, you're still half the cost of what it would cost you to get a Netgate appliance. And oh, by the way, you can run pfSense on it. You can run OpenSense on it. You can run ViOS on it. You can run whatever you want on it. You could run plain old Debian and use IP tables if you wanted to. You can do whatever you like. And there's no weird VLAN bonding, that sort of thing. With OpenSense, you're going to get an update every 2 weeks on the dot. You can plan for it. You can get ready to roll it out, all the things. And so over time, we took a staged approach. The first thing we did is we started winding down our reliance on Netgate hardware, in part because it was just, when they failed, it was so catastrophic. You have this client, they're dead in the water. You can't substitute any other piece of hardware. At some point, we found ourselves standing around the shop looking at each other going, what exactly is open source about this? Open source means I can go get the source code and use it. I can't do that, or at least if I try to. I mean, you can go open the XML and hack around and all the things, which, when you're left without a choice, I guess you figure out how to do. But it wasn't really a fantastic experience, and it didn't really end us leaving like, oh man, I feel like this is so much better than the Cisco world or the Sophos world or whatever else. And so switching over to OpenSense has been kind of a slow thing. We started over at the shop and we switched our router over there. I have my, what I call the technology router, the kids router, is running OpenSense. Steve, you actually started down the path of switching to OpenSense and then you reverted. Tell me about that. So I attempted to, about a year and a half ago now, I attempted to put OpenSense on my Protectly box. So I currently have pfSense. I exported the configs, and from what I understood, you're supposed to just be able to import your pfSense config into OpenSense and everything is happy. Well, I tried that
The challenge is that I don't have a flat network. I have, I want to say 5 or 6 different VLANs. And what I found was when I tried to import the config, it didn't import everything properly. So I ended up with a non-functional network. So I spent several hours trying to figure out how to do what I had done in pfSense in OpenSense. Now, I was not in the right state of mind to do this insofar as I'm in a little bit of a panic with my house being down and trying to figure out how to do something, connect to the internet, then connect back to the modem or router, tinker around, didn't work, doing that sort of dance. And so admittedly, I did not do any research ahead of time because in speaking with people as well as seeing stuff around on the internet, it sounded like importing your configs from pfSense should have just worked. And maybe it does when it's a simpler setup. And so I didn't do any kind of prep, and that was on me. But the end result was after about a half a day, I had to revert and go back to pfSense and just drop my config back in place because I couldn't get it to work, and I couldn't afford to have my house down any longer because it wasn't just access to the internet. When the VLANs are down, the house doesn't work. All of the automation doesn't work. None of the stuff routes properly. It's just a terrible mess. And so can't have that. And I have been kind of gun shy ever since because at the time I didn't have a second box that had 2 interfaces where I might be able to tinker around with. I now do, and I'll say in air quotes, plan to try this again in the future because I'm not happy with the ability to automate pfSense particularly well. And so that's kind of a big sticking point for me because I do a lot of stuff like if I spin up a new service, which the other day I counted, I think I'm up to 29 different services that have web front ends. And so when I do that, especially if they're living on the same host, I just attach a DNS alias to that host. And I would like to make that an automated process because it's kind of a pain to do that. I've already automated things like the reverse proxy so that Apache is handling the vhosts and you don't have to fiddle around with ports, but I still need the DNS entries and all that sort of stuff. So
next time around, would you consider building it from scratch as opposed to trying to import?
I don't know. That's a tough one because I've got a lot of legacy, and I don't mean legacy cruft, but I've got a lot of legacy stuff in there that I now have to figure out how does this work. So I've got on the kids VLAN, for example, the internet is on a timer. So in pfSense, you can set a rule that says always on or always off and give it a time of day or even days of the week or whatever. And so to control for the internet, like the internet's on from 10:30 in the morning till 2:30 in the afternoon on the kids VLAN. And so I would have to take all of those pieces and figure that out all over again.
Well, as a guy who has done that at least once, my suggestion is do that. Nuke and pave. I've not had very much luck importing. If you do, tell me how you did it. And if you're listening to this and you've had success either starting over from scratch or importing, let us know at live@asknoahshow.com. And the music in our ears means we're out of time. We'll see you back next week, Tuesday, 6 p.m. Central, asknoahshow.com.